right, well, many thanks for coming, everyone. I am Flamingo. You can call me Flamingo for short. I am an agender writer of original BL, and I've been a Fujin since I played Fire Emblem Blazing Sword on a Game Boy Advance, so that'll give you a little clue about my age. I'm also sincerely fascinated by male pregnancy and have been for about the same length of time as I've been a Fujin. I gave a panel at last year's CitrusCon where I talked about the different ways Mpreg is often presented in BL and reflected on the possible reasons why it might appeal to some people. My experience is that the audience that enjoys Mpreg is very diverse, much like the audience for BL in general is very diverse. A lot of people are queer, not everybody is, and people are drawn to it for diverse reasons. So I bring my perspective again as a non-binary person who has been pregnant, who still has hang-ups about it, and must continue to live with the inconvenience of having those body parts. Sorry, can everybody still see my slides? I'm super paranoid about it, but hopefully they're transitioning okay. All right, awesome. Let's move on. So when cis women write fiction or nonfiction about pregnancy or about reproduction, like I have and continue to share in a lot of those experiences. But of course, those don't fully speak to me as a non-woman. So that's one reason why I and perhaps some queer folks like me might seek out Mpreg instead. That there's something about men or non-women experiencing pregnancy that is a little more familiar. And for some people, and I see this certainly not always, but often from cis women, that Mpreg allows them to explore pregnancy without the anxiety of it being about their own bodies and rooted in their own experiences. Sometimes it's just fun speculation or fantasy. I have not heard too many cis men talk about Mpreg, but I've come across a couple. And for some of them, the interest is, well, I can't start a family this way in reality, but what if? And still others might seek out Mpreg for the schadenfreude. Like, there's a lot of basic biological unfairness in the human reproductive system. Sometimes watching a man suffer helps a little bit with the bitterness. Of course, there's wump potential, there's drama potential. Some people just think the babies and the round bellies are real cute, and that's awesome. Whatever brings you to the Mpreg buffet, maybe it's all of these reasons, that's all great, truly. I am happy you're here. So I take Mpreg pretty damn seriously as a means of discussing reproduction, gender, and the body outside the confines of conventional femininity, and sometimes even beyond the male-female binary entirely. And that's what I'm focusing on in this talk. I'm going to jaw on about Mpreg BL in particular that I think confronts resentment and discomfort about one's body and one's gender and takes characters on journeys from shame and ostracization to self-assurance. I'm going to start by discussing a few BLs that I had covered last year about characters who become pregnant but still affirm their own masculinity, so men who navigate being pregnant and being unquestionably a man. But then I'm going to take a closer look at how Mpreg is handled in a very niche subgenre of Danmei web novels, dubbed Gar novels. You've all heard of male omegas, and a Gar is extremely similar, a man who can get pregnant naturally. So similar to the Omegaverse, Gar novels are about settings where these people exist. Gars are treated as more of a third gender in the world of these novels. Then I want to talk about the male partners of Gar characters in this genre and how their nonconformity ties into some of these themes I see both in Gar novels and other Mpreg BL. And finally, I want to take our last 10-15 minutes or so to just open the floor up to you, the audience. I feel like Mpreg appreciators don't always get a lot of spaces to congregate, not a lot of opportunities for us to come together in communion. So I want to take advantage of this space and let you guys ask more questions, respond to the material I'm going to put out here, or if you have anything else you want to share, like your favorite Mpreg conventions. If you want to pitch an Mpreg headcanon, then you can do that, and we'll all appreciate your great taste. For afterwards, I've got a thread up in the discussion section of the con, so if you want to share stuff or keep chatting in that thread, that's possible. But there is also an Mpreg meetup thread in that other section of the con discussion, so come join us. I'm going to give some blanket content warnings right off the hop here for abuse, rape, genitals, sexual and gender-based bigotry, just general spoilers. I will also be assuming some general knowledge of the Omegaverse here. But also before we start, what the hell am I talking about this deeply niche subgenre of Chinese BL web novels for? The short answer is, I don't really know. True confessions. I don't really understand Gar novels. Almost all Danmei authors generally operate behind pseudonyms, so I, for better or worse, know next to nothing about them or their ideas or their motivations. The way Gars are presented in these novels can be kind of weird sometimes, but I do know that I really like weird art about weird bodies. Fantasy genders and fantasy bodies I feel, can give a space and freedom to imagine real world gender and bodies completely beyond the male female binary most of the world treats as the default. So, like the Omegaverse, GARs don't actually exist. They're a literary convention, a loose collective fantasy that writers and readers engage with in their own ways. GAR novels are undoubtedly BL. I can't imagine these registering to the audience as anything other than man-on-man relationships. But when the narrative is also suggesting that they are or could be a separate gender, I wonder, does that potentially leave room for them to speak to other queer experiences in addition? Maybe. One of the most common conventions that I've seen is that GARs face a lot of rejection because of this in-betweenness of their bodies. So rejection by their families and by their communities just for existing. So we have a genre of novels about people who don't fit into their culture, but who eventually come to find hope, belonging, and self-acceptance. I find that GAR novels can be a strange experience to read. They can be pretty messy. Like when I'll reading them, and there'll be something that really weirds me out. I'm just like, I don't know if I'm on board with this. But then the next minute, there'll be something that makes me really interested. In them, the ostensible line of demarcation between men and not men is pregnancy. But I feel like in the actual reading audience experience, that line can be really hazy. And it's this haziness and this overall messiness that really intrigues me, that I think is worth thinking about. So that's what this talk is going to be. Not me trying making hard claims about things. Like I said, I don't fully understand these. Definitely not going to be making any kind of moral judgments like, oh, I think this thing is good or bad. I'm just kind of going to be sharing what's been on my mind as I experience these weird little works of art. So let's start with our first title. This is one of my favorite manga. This is Haramase nin Kyodo, also known as Chivalry Impregnation. There's so much going on in here, I could talk about it all day, but it is about Aoyagi Taiga, who is the son of a mob boss. In this world, there are some men who can get pregnant naturally. There's no term given for this, no particular explanation, but these men essentially suffer from extremely debilitating, or some men suffer from extremely debilitating periods. So for you Omegaverse fans, it's really similar to an Omega Heat. Taiga's father is one of these particular men. He gave birth to Taiga personally, and Taiga is now one too. You can see that this young man is a nasty-looking piece of work. Us manga veterans know that this hair, this Yusuke Urameshi-coded nonsense means nothing but trouble. He spends, I think, 90% of his illustrations looking like this, just snarling. He probably kicks 40 guys' asses over 12 chapters. He is just always pissed off. He hates his body. He hates that it can get pregnant against his will. This is a vulnerability that, as he sees it, diminishes him. And he seems not wrong to be paranoid about how other people treat him because of this. At the start of the manga, his mob boss father announces that the first lieutenant in the crime family to impregnate Taiga will eventually inherit the family, become the big boss. And in this world of gangster animals, this offer goes exactly how you would expect. Taiga now has to spend his time physically fighting off older men attempting to rape him, including men in his own crime family. It's interesting because if you watch a lot of straight gangster movies, or normie gangster movies at least, you read about organized criminals, the way they talk about themselves, they always like to go on about the bonds of brotherhood, about loyalty and all that horseshit. And in Haramase nin Kyodo, the men who are supposed to be not just Taiga's subordinates, but his brothers, immediately see his body as free real estate. So yeah, so much for honor among men. I'll note that Taiga does defend his own self. With some help from his childhood friend and eventual lover, I'll have more to say about him later. Taiga physically fights off all of his attackers. And as I said, I could go on, but Haramase, in short, is a story of Taiga having to constantly prove not only his right to agency over his own body, but to affirm, seemingly to himself as much as anyone else, that whatever bullshit his body is up to, he is still a man. And in the end, he does reach that point, with some support from said childhood friend and eventual husband, where he can get pregnant and still feel like a man. So let's take a look at another character who hates the position his body has put him in. Guan Shanyu is a danmei, so it's a Chinese BL novel. I think this illustration is from the audio drama adaptation of the novel. We have one of the fictional Dayan Empire's most talented young generals, Sun Yalan, here in black. I'm going to make a really quick aside. I'm working on being able to read Mandarin a little bit, learn some of the characters. I'm working on my pinyin pronunciation. I'm still trying to practice tones, but that is all to say I really do want to learn how to say names right. So if you have feedback on my pronunciation, please absolutely put that in the discussion thread. I'm not good at watching the chat while I talk, so I'm probably going to miss it if you put it here. But if you have suggestions or feedback on how I say names, feel free to send that my way. So back to the matter at hand. This character in black, Sunyalan, has two functioning sets of genitalia, a vulva and a uterus, as well as a scrotum and a penis. Now, Sunyalan, the character, is also a man. He has never considered himself anything else. He lives in the extremely masculine world of martial arts and the military. He's very good at it. He is also very ashamed and unhappy with this womb that he's got. This is not a world where this kind of body appears to exist elsewhere. There are no other characters in the book with a body like his. And the one or two people in his childhood who saw his naked body call him a freak. So he's afraid he's neither a man or a woman. And this informs a lot of Sunyalan's reserved personality. He has a tremendous amount of respect from his own soldiers, but he comes off as cold and withdrawn, and he doesn't get too close to anyone. He goes to great lengths just to keep himself hidden and be seen like every other man. And he also seems not wrong to do this. When he was a young war orphan, an older man attempted to rape him after catching sight of his vulva. Now, our other leading character in the lighter robes here is His Highness Prince Yuanzheng. At the start of the book, he is a sneering, arrogant little rich prick, and he doesn't like General Tsen's attitude. So when he discovers Sunyalan's secret by accident, he succeeds in raping him. So it's as if the moment any other man finds out what Sunyalan's body is like, they think, oh, I can do what I want with that. Anyway, there's a lot of plot in this book. It's like 100 chapters long. Yuanzheng does go through a lot of maturing after he has his way with Sunyalan, and they eventually start a consensual relationship. So, with all stories in this genre, like the rapist changes and becomes lover genre, whether or not you buy that transformation is up to you, but it is what it is. In any case, though, Sunyalan gets pregnant after they've started their mutual relationship. So this is after Yuanzheng has started maturing. And the long and short of this one is, it's a cool novel. I enjoy it quite a lot. When Sunyalan does get pregnant, he doesn't retire from the military. He remains a general even after giving birth to their daughter. The three of them have a happy, if unconventional, family, though Sunyalan never publicly reveals that the daughter is of his flesh. That's his body and his pregnancy remain kind of privileged information among the three of them. And I want to note that similarly to Haramasen and Kyoto, Sunyalan's womb doesn't necessarily make him between a man and a woman. That is to say, just because he has a womb, he is not some nth gender, some combination perhaps of man and woman. Certainly other people in the story might see him as such. I mentioned his attempted rape as a child. That assailant called him a freak, and in Sunyalan's times of doubt and resentment, he might fear as much. But at his core, in his own heart, and crucially, the narrative, I think, takes this very seriously, Sunyalan is only a man. Yuanzheng doesn't try to denigrate him as lesser either. Like after the prince matures, he's kind of clingy, but he doesn't force Sunyalan to take on the role of empress just because he's carrying the dragon seed. So just because he's pregnant with the prince's child, he doesn't take him away. That would keep Sunyalan away from battle, away from politics. And Yuanzheng does not try to tie Sunyalan down at all. So in this final example, we have My Adorable Pregnant Husband, a very different type of book. This is a novel set in the contemporary world where recently a lot of men have spontaneously grown wombs inside themselves. Suddenly, a few men are in fact able to get pregnant themselves. This book goes into a bit of detail on how these body parts work mechanically. So if you're interested in the speculative biology aspect of Mpreg, like how all this could work in a male body, you might find some cool stuff in this novel. But one of these, the remarkable men who can do this is Iwamoto Taiichi, this adorable big boy right here. He shows up at the gynecology department with stomach cramps and learns that he has a womb now. He will menstruate. He is capable of carrying a child. He responds to this revelation by punching his doctor in the face. I can think of no more masculine response to fear and uncertainty. But anyway, he feels bad about that. He ends up having a really trusting doctor-patient relationship as he navigates dealing with his body. And this, of course, blossoms into an equally supportive, emotional, romantic, and sexual relationship. It's really nice. And again, you can see here, Iwamoto is a big boy. He's a carpenter with a construction company, and the book is actually narrated by his doctor, later husband, later father of his child, Dr. Yuge Takashi. He's the disembodied head up here in this illustration. He's always gushing about how gorgeous Iwamoto is, the kind of classically masculine beauty that Yuge not only desires sexually, but actually envies. And his earlier outbursts notwithstanding, Iwamoto is a really nice, gentle guy. Over the course of the book, he has to learn practical things like how to use sanitary products very discreetly while he's on a job site with a bunch of other big dudes, and also how to accept that this reality does not make him less of a man. Something that I found really meaningful in this novel is that when Iwamoto does get pregnant, like it's a surprise, they decide pretty quick they do want to start a family, but the novel does get into how complicated this is for him emotionally. Iwamoto gets sidelined at work, which is unsurprisingly upsetting for him, and psychologically, he still has trouble squaring what his body is doing with his own self-image. He wants a baby, but being pregnant is hard for him. And God knows, even for cishet women who wanted to have a baby, pregnancy tends to kind of blow, and Yuge acknowledges and sympathizes with how this is especially challenging for Iwamoto, though he's excited to have a baby. And I think it's significant for the novel to confront that both of these things can be true. Both of these feelings can exist simultaneously, and that it is possible that Iwamoto might not ever feel entirely uncomplicatedly fine in a world that does not know what to do with his kind of body. Not unlike Senyalan, Iwamoto says early on that he feels like he's a freak that isn't a woman or a man. And it's Yuge who tells him, "You're a man, you just have extra materials." And the idea of his reproductive organs being extra or additional feels important. For all three of the characters I've talked about so far, their bodies have undoubtedly shaped how other people treat them, how they see themselves, how they have to navigate the culture around them. But they're not the inevitable determinant of who they are. They're men with extra stuff. So given these very few examples, there's so much great Mpreg BL out there, folks. I only looked at 3 of them. I want to turn our attention now, though, to a genre that takes a different approach to the idea of men with naturally occurring wombs. So again, when people talk about gar novels, they refer to a genre of Chinese language BL novels, so a genre of danmei, which are about worlds with 3 genders: men, women, and men who can give birth, who naturally possess wombs. I want to give a quick shout out to Jemima, who is here at this very convention. They gave a panel earlier today, and I think they're giving another one on food and BL in like 12 hours or something. But last summer, I was finding precious little information on the English language internet on the origins of gar novels. So if anyone else has other resources or knowledge about this, please do come at me in that discussion thread or once I wrap up here, because I have not had a lot of luck tracking down what the first gar novel was or who the first author was. I'm really curious to know who was Patient Zero. But in any case, I want to give Jemima credit for pointing me in the right direction last summer. However, if anything I say here is an error, that's completely on me. And of course, more importantly, all the interpretations I'm going to be gabbing on about and throwing out here are my own reactions. I'm just thinking about what in these novels might be interesting to me as a non-binary person with hang-ups. So anyway, the word gar comes from the Chinese character for brother. It's ge with the term of endearment r. You'll often, if you read these novels, you'll often see the term fulong, which is used to refer to a married gar. This genre came out of the Omegaverse boom, and as far as I can tell, that would have been as early as the late 2010s. I've seen some gar novels originally published in 2019, and I've assumed they've been around longer than that. So I'm not exactly sure when, but as far as I can tell, they got earlier than the late 2010s. And they came about apparently because some danmei authors wanted a concept that was similar to Omegaverse, but more homegrown and that had fewer rules. So a lot of the especially animal-inspired characteristics that are really common in Omegaverse are not present in gar novels. Like there's no heats, no ruts, no nests, no suppressants, no packs, no scents, none of that. Any gar novel is going to be vastly simpler than that. There are men, there are women, and there are gars. In rare cases, you might have a world of only men and gars. So I think even if you have just a passing familiarity with the Omegaverse, you'll know that every author interprets that convention differently, right? Like every alpha, beta, omega universe is unique. And the same is true for gar novels. These are all fantasy structures. The rules are pretty loose. You can do whatever you want. But broadly speaking, there are some expectations that have grown around gar novels. You'll frequently see that a gar is at least assumed by other characters to be slimmer, shorter, less muscular than a man. They're unable to impregnate women and more likely to die in childbirth than women. And gars are also less fertile overall than women are. In some stories, gars are also less common than either men or women. Gars are also usually identified by having a mark or mole of some kind on their body, often the forehead, but sometimes elsewhere. That tends to be, I see that tend to be called a pregnancy mole. And in the culture in these stories tends to assume that a bright red pregnancy mole indicates strong fertility and a brown or dark mole indicates poor fertility. a really quick distinction I want to make, hopefully this will be evident as I talk, but whenever I say the culture in the novels, I don't mean the culture of readers and authors of Gar novels. I mean like the fictional culture in the setting. So it's like, it's other characters, for example, saying that the bright red mark means that Gar is fertile. One of the big genre markers of the Gar novel, as much as the presence of Gar themselves, is the setting. They are almost invariably nice, slow, slice-of-life comfort stories set in a fantasy version of rural pre-modern China. Sometimes characters might eventually move to a large city, but it will almost always start in a pastoral setting involving farming, foraging, hunting, village life. You'll probably get a sense of other very common characteristics from the titles, which include, but are by no means limited to, Back to the Countryside, Ugly Gar's Farming Story, Sweet Little Fulong, Little Gar, Slow Life in Another World, The Transmigrated Legion's Daily Farming Life, Earning a Living, Taking Examinations, and Supporting the Family through the Rural Imperial Examination System. They will usually start with a poor or troubled family struggling for food, like just a shocking number of early chapters of Gar novels involve a single boiled egg being treated as a luxury. And the plot will usually revolve around slowly accumulating at least a modest amount of wealth, sometimes a spectacular amount of wealth, either through owning a lot of stores, starting a chain of successful businesses, or taking the imperial examinations and maybe going all the way to the top. And this is done through mostly honest work, probably a special talent, though the characters might not be above occasionally using trickery to get one over on shitty people who deserve what's coming to them. So for example, a transmigrator character might have a special power that they can use to get a slight advantage. And again, transmigration is the rough Chinese literary equivalent to the Japanese isekai or the Western portal fantasy. In these cases, that would be like a person from our world, or at least their consciousness, is transported into the body of either a man who marries a Gar or into the body of a Gar. This is not at all uncommon in this genre, too. And something worth noting, I think, a moment ago I said that often in the world of a Gar novel, the Gar is called a third gender. But interestingly, when a modern transmigrator is involved in the story, they tend to have a harder time seeing the Gars as this third gender. They will often continue to think of them as men, just with something else going on. So like you might have something like, for example, the novel My Favorite Manly Husband, or the novel Gar So Proud, where the transmigrator main character meets a Gar and is like, oh, a hot man, nice. Or the transmigrator goes into the body of a Gar, such as after being forced to marry an ugly husband, where he never stops feeling like a man. There are also a lot of big soap opera theatrics in these novels. And now I am Latina, I am from the culture that invented the telenovela, so I am definitely not too good for trashy family fights in the village square. Face slapping is the term you might see used in this scene, and it means exactly what you think. A lot of shitty family members, shitty neighbors, shitty government officials, and shitty rich people making trouble for the main characters, but eventually getting what's coming to them. Like, it's primo stuff. Of course, it's not all assholes all the time. There'll be plenty of good relatives and neighbors and honorable administrators at the county yamen for them to, help out, collaborate with, and build community with. And the other major hallmark of Gar novels that I have observed, the Gar characters, whether they are the primary focus character or not, almost always, I mean like the main, like the narratively focused, the point of view character, they are almost always rejects. At the opening of Farmer's Little Husband, for example, the orphan Gar Lin Yu is described as getting the hardest chores and the least amount of food in his uncle's house. He's hastily married off to a broke hunter for a very small payment, and as they're dressing him for the wedding, they note that there are bruises on his arms from beatings, and this is very typical of rural Gars. In the novel Farmer Gar in the Apocalypse, Shen Qing, the young Gar, leaves his extremely abusive family with his mom. And in at the beginning of Gar So Proud, that has a young Gar who is coincidentally also named Lin Yu. He and his mother are living alone after they've already left an abusive family. In the opening of My Favorite Manly Husband and The Transmigrated Legion's Farming Life, those two novels, we learn that the Gars were abused by their husbands. And in both of those cases, that's a case of a modern man transmigrating to the body of the abusive husband. So they immediately put a stop to that and start treating the poor Gars better. And of course, this kind of thing is a nice, straightforward way to generate drama. But I noticed that in these narratives, so much of the scapegoating seems to be justified or motivated by the way that the Gar is a gender caught in between. As I said earlier, the general assumption in the fictional cultures is that the Gars are smaller than men. They're supposed to be soft and slender. And I get the sense that in some novels, this is not so much a hard biological truth as it is an unfair beauty standard that the culture has invented. So it's a prejudice in the setting that Gars are too weak to be running things like men. However, they are also understood to be worse at bearing children than women and less fertile, such that they're often less desirable as marriage partners for men than women are. In a lot of these novels, the general population would see even a beautiful Gar bride as a step down from a woman bride. So we're looking at a section of people, as far as the fictional culture is concerned, whose whole existence is bad at being men, bad at being women. So the culture shoves them into this unhappy nether space where they're almost superfluous. And I personally find this interesting. I think in most places in our real world, if you are a person who, for a variety of reasons, cannot conform to what your culture believes to be a male body and thus male behavior, or to a female body and thus female behavior, then that culture at large may not know what to do with you, or may not want you around at all. Same with Gars. Despite being a naturally occurring quote-unquote species of the world, the culture is not built to accommodate them. So you can see how this would lead to not only family rejection, but systemic inequality in the fictional culture of the setting. Gars are forced into submissive, subservient gender roles. The belief is that they should just put up with bearing the brunt of the family anger and labor and serve neglectful or even abusive husbands, and be grateful that they have anything at all. I think Farmer Gar in the Apocalypse delves into these ideas deeper than any other that I have encountered so far in this subgenre of Danmei. This is a really fascinating novel that feels a lot more forceful than Gar novels. Now again, I don't know this author. I will not make hard claims about their intentions for writing this. But it spends a lot of time ruminating on structural inequality and drawing parallels between this novel's fantasy world and the modern world. And again, I'm not going to assume anything of the author, but like as a reader, as I was reading this, I felt like I was sensing real anger. But this is a novel about, I mentioned it very briefly, a novel about a young Gar named Shen Qing, whose mother is cast aside by his father because she has only given birth to a Gar and not a son. So Shen Qing and his mother have been mistreated for a long time because of this. And in the very early chapters, Shen Qing threatens his father with a knife to declare that he and his mother are just breaking away from the family. This sets up the tone and the major themes of the rest of the novel. Shen Qing is extremely cognizant of the fact that men, especially firstborn sons, are on top of the social order, and women and the Gars are below. I can't spend too much time on the philosophy this novel has, and there's also a lot of plot, but again, long and short, Shen Qing knows that the only path to safety in his world for a Gar or a woman is by tying themselves to a man and his family, and he refuses to accept this. He spends the novel acquiring economic power to get himself out of the narrow track the world has set up for people like him, and by that I mean he becomes an entrepreneur. He discovers a portal to a world similar to ours that has been reduced by ashes to a zombie outbreak. He uses the plentiful fresh water and food in his world to trade for useful things back in the apocalypse, and then he brings that stuff back to his world for various business ventures. He assembles a whole crew in the apocalypse. He gets himself a boyfriend named Sung Kai-ji. It's a whole thing. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but Shen Qing becomes a very successful small business owner in his town. It's kind of funny that the way that this is his path to liberation, it's an interesting choice, but in his world, he starts recruiting women and other Gars in his world to work for him only, not men. And something else he consciously is aware of is the way that his patriarchal culture encourages women and Gars to compete with each other, within family units and in the world at large. And of course, this is something that happens in our real world, time and time again. That's how overclasses maintain their own power, like whether it's men encouraging women to compete with each other for the favor of men, and then very broadly, where a ruling class encourages competition among all of the classes below. You've got one demographic that's slightly higher, being incentivized to use their limited power to further oppress the class below them, very broadly speaking. But that's Shen Qing describes the same thing happening in his world along gender lines, and he doesn't like it. So that's why he deliberately is hiring women and Gars to work for him. Moreover, when those employees leave the house to do stuff, when they work with other people towards a goal, it gives them a sense of agency outside of their own homes. And so all of this ultimately leads to what I can only describe as a velvet revolution that upends the extremely hierarchical, patriarchal power structure in his small town. Younger sons break away from toxic parents, abused wives and fulongs leave their abusers. It changes this whole society's basic structures. So that is something of an anomaly among Gar novels, just largely because it gets a lot darker than they usually will. Like Sun Qing and his boyfriend Song Kaiji are put in life-threatening danger multiple times, both in the ancient world and the apocalyptic world. Also, most Gar novels don't have, the whole plot arcing around bringing down unjust power structures. Again, they're like fluffy. They're about just like building a home and generating a little bit of material comfort. But even though these novels do present these unjust power structures and these unjust societies, I don't think they're doing so uncritically, at least not usually. Characters who are sympathetic to the audience, so it's like the main and side characters, are shown to be genuinely suffering under this injustice. The audience will get angry at the unfairness of it all. Like, I feel like the audience is genuinely meant to see this as a bad state of affairs. So even if the characters aren't as aggressive about destroying the systems of power, they still live in ways that reject the status quo. Before we get any deeper into that, though, I want to get back to this idea of Gars being supposedly bad at being men and bad at being women. And again, I don't mean that the authors have that idea about Gars, but the prevailing culture in the settings of the novel. Given this double bind, so it's probably not surprising that Gar characters will sometimes have hang-ups about their bodies. The culture incentivizes men to see Gars as existing for their benefit. So Gars are targets for sexual violence. Harassment and at least attempted rape are very common in Gar novels. Domestic violence is very common, not between the main couple, usually side characters. Again, I have not come across a Gar novel where where it's not about like a very healthy, supportive relationship. I mentioned the farmer's little husband, where the Gar Lin Yu is rushed into a marriage by his aunt and uncle, and it's because his cousin has started sexually harassing him, and he's seen as a temptation for his cousin. Gars tend to not be given good sex ed, so it's not uncommon, especially in the non-transmigration novels, for there to be a lot of fear and embarrassment around sex for the first time. There's a learning curve towards having pleasurable sex. Farmer Gar the Apocalypse, not surprisingly, had some interesting thoughts on this too. In the culture of that novel, married women and Gars will discuss sex very, very freely amongst themselves. They'll share a lot of knowledge. But unmarried women and Gars are barricaded from that knowledge at all costs. It's seen as extremely taboo to discuss it in front of them. So of course, young women and Gars will go into marriage completely ignorant. But also, you might see Gars who have been made to feel unattractive. They'll often be belittled as being physically softer and weaker than men. But if they happen to be taller and stronger, they're derided as being ugly instead. And my favorite manly husband is about a young gay man named Shen Yanbei, who transmigrates into the body of a country scholar who is already married to a Gar. It's Gu Chengfeng, and that's him standing up here. As with other Gar novels, the beauty standards in this world are that Gars are slender, short, and feminine, but Gu Chengfeng is very tall. He's strong enough to do manual labor, and he's trained as a martial artist. So he has been treated as deeply undesirable. He's carrying a lot of shame because of this. He's so self-conscious that he'll restrict his diet because he's afraid that his husband will be grossed out and embarrassed seeing his Gar eating as much as a man. And now Shen Yanbei, though, happens to be way into tall, athletic dudes with great butts, so he's always very sweet and supportive. He loves to say how gorgeous his fulong is. But it really still takes some time for Gu Chengfeng to internalize this. The true confessions, I love Gu Chengfeng. I adore insecure characters, and I love martial artists, so he is maybe my favorite Gar. In any case, this insecurity carries over to Gu Chengfeng's eventual pregnancy as well. I don't think it's that common in BL to have a character dealing with body image issues after birth. I feel like I don't see that very often, but it does come up for Gu Chengfeng. He knows his husband loved him when he looked like he was carved out of wood. So he's worried about what's going to happen if his body gets soft, now that his body is softer after being pregnant. And of course, also that pregnancy mole that I mentioned, that can be a source of anxiety for characters. And I think this comes from traditional Chinese medicine, where like bright red menstrual blood is seen as indicating overall good health, and darker blood may indicate health or fertility issues. That's a huge oversimplification, but I think it might be that inspired this convention in Gar novels that red mole equals fertile and dark equals infertile. These marks are usually publicly visible. So a Gar with a dark mole will see their societal value plummet. And Gu Chengfeng has a dark, dull pregnancy mole right on his face. So everyone assumes he won't be able to get pregnant. So his strength and his martial arts make him quote unquote ugly. And he's presumably not even capable of the only thing a Gar is supposed to be good for. So Poor Gu Changfeng. He lost his memory too. He's all alone in the world, but it's okay. He and Shen Yanbei make a loving couple, and it turns out that at the end of the novel, Gu Changfeng does get pregnant. So in several ways, he defies the naysayers. Shen Yanbei, of course, always accepted his body with its perceived flaws, but it's still a wonderful surprise for him to get pregnant because they do want kids. And when a gar does get pregnant, I find it is happy. Even transmigrated characters kind of get over the idea. I mentioned the novel After Being Forced to Marry an Ugly Husband, and in that Yu Qingyan is a modern man who transmigrates into the body of a gar. And he is a little freaked out by the idea that he can get pregnant at first, but once he starts seeing friends and neighbors around him with babies, he starts imagining having his own, one that would look like him and his beloved blacksmith husband. So even though he continues to see himself as a man, he decides like, yeah, it's okay, I do want to try for a baby. In Farmer Gar in the Apocalypse, Shen Qing gets pregnant by his smitten apocalypse boyfriend pretty late in the novel as well. And when I was reading this novel, like up to that point, I really thought that Shen Qing was going to be upset or ashamed by this. Like he'd fought against the confines of being a gar for so long that I thought this was going to trigger, I really thought this was going to trigger a crisis for him. But it doesn't. He is happy to be a person with agency and be giving birth. His body isn't the problem. It's the culture that's the problem. For him and other gars, giving birth does not have to relegate them to a secondary or subservient role in the space of their family or the place in the community that they have carved out for themselves over the course of the narrative. It does not take away their agency or their personhood. Now, of course, I've only read a fraction of the existing Gar novels that have even been translated, not even the ones that have been written. So I'm sure soon enough I'll come across one where the Gar does not want to be pregnant. They'll experience the kind of wrongness or conflicted feelings, the likes of which we saw in the stories like Haramasen in Kyoto or Guanshan Yue or My Adorable Pregnant Husband. But for the moment, I haven't seen that. Gar novels that I have read seem to take the affirming approach to male pregnancy. I think that's not surprising given how gentle and fluffy and feel-good the genre is as a whole. But even so, I feel like we as readers are meant to understand that pregnancy does not make these men lesser, nor does it make them women. I don't think it's an accident that Gars tend to get pregnant kind of late in the novel. Like almost every Gar character has some kind of special talent of their own. Like Lin Yu of Farmer's Little Husband, for example, does really beautiful embroidery that earns him extra money. Other Lin Yu of the novel Gar So Proud is a very skilled hunter and outdoorsman. He's very self-sufficient. Our good boy Gu Changfeng is a martial artist. And Shen Qing and a few other Gar characters also, they just have a really good head for business. And this is one of the major ways they build a space for themselves in their world. They use whatever talent to earn a bit of money, get some independence from an abusive family, and contribute to the food that their husband is bringing home. I mentioned that Gar novels often have plots that focus on this kind of steadily farming, steadily building at least some kind of comfortable amount of wealth for the couple, and whatever particular talent the Gar has is very much part of that. What I have mostly seen then is that the Gar gets pregnant well into this process of home building, often late in the novel or at the end. He and his usually husband or occasionally boyfriend have at least reached a materially comfort and emotionally fulfilling place by the time the Gar gets pregnant. So this way, they're not being made whole by having a baby. They've already reached a place of better stability. They've already achieved a better sense of self-worth through their own abilities, and now they happen to also want a child. And it reminds me a little bit of how Haramasen in Kyoto ends, actually. Now that manga, I think, would have still been great if Taiga continued to refuse to have children even after getting married to his childhood friend. However, in the final chapter of that manga, after some time has passed, he does discover that he's pregnant and he decides that he's fine with this, because at that point he's having a baby on his own terms, after he's found a way to be secure in his body, not just for the other hoodlums in the gang, but for himself. So now that I've talked a whole lot about Gars and the men who get pregnant, I really want to take a moment to get into the other half of these couples, and to do that, I want to circle back to the Omegaverse. One of my very favorite Omegaverse tropes is that of the unconventional Omega. So that is either because of his body or his choices, he doesn't fit into whatever his culture deems expected Omega behavior. Two of my favorites are How to Deal When Your Neighbor is an Intimidating Omega and The Alpha Doctor Falls in Love with the Guinea Pig. Neither of these manga involve Mpreg yet, but they do have worlds where Mpreg is on the table and mentioned at least obliquely. Now we have unconventional Omegas in both of these manga, but their alpha boyfriends are also unconventional. So in How to Deal, our Omega Ryunosuke rides a sweet motorcycle, he covers himself in tattoos, He puts on a snarly air to keep the alphas away, to the point where his new neighbor Kota mistakes him for an alpha. Kota happens to be an alpha who just doesn't get what all the fuss is about. He doesn't with omegas is about. He doesn't dislike omegas, but he's not interested in sex. Not until his tough guy neighbor Ryunosuke goes into heat, and it turns out that smell drives him crazy. And we learn that Kota is what this universe calls an idiosyncratic omega. He cannot smell omegas at all, except for his special fated mate, and that just happens to be Ryunosuke. So essentially, this unusual omega's perfect match is an unusual alpha. An alpha doctor, our unconventional omega, is Genjiro, who is full of self-loathing for his tall and physically imposing body that he believes makes him undesirable as an omega. And he also has heat so frequent debilitating that he can't keep a job. His perfect match is the alpha owner of a pharmaceutical company who has been so absorbed in R&D through his whole adulthood that he doesn't really have any sexual experience, so he too is a very unusual alpha. And again, I think this extends to at least two of the first works that I talked about. Ren of Haramase Ninkyodo is Taiga's childhood friend, later husband. He's conventionally attractive, but he's also not from the stupidly masculine world of lawless gangsters. He's a popular host at a host club. His job is to be beautiful and appealing for the pleasure of women. And in My Adorable Pregnant Husband, remember our narrator is actually Dr. Yuge Takashi. So he is uniquely positioned to support Iwamoto because he is a gynecologist, certainly. But he is also not an average confident guy. Like, the poor guy at the beginning of the novel sees himself as kind of a loser, at least in his personal life. He doesn't go on dates, he doesn't have a lot of friends, he thinks that he has an unattractive, scrawny body. It's really only in supporting the man that he loves that he starts to appreciate and feel good about his own body. So in these examples here, for the men with troublesome bodies, an average guy won't do. It takes an equal weirdo to make them happy, and I think I've seen the same phenomenon in gar novels. So in these novels, first of all, the capital M male boyfriends that they have, or as husbands, never see gars as a lesser gender. Part of this, of course, is that these are feel-good stories, nice romantic relationships, but it's more than just like treating a lesser person nicely. They treat the gar as a partner and an equal. Like, a lot of these gar novels present cultures that systemically treat gars unfairly, and the boyfriends and husbands don't buy into those cultural norms that gars should be scorned and subservient. This is super evident, I think, in the transmigrator novels. Like, these are the transmigrator characters are open-minded and forward-thinking. They believe in equality among all genders, so they're not threatened at all if their partner has ambitions or if they have some skill in a traditionally masculine activity like hunting or scholarship or martial arts, or they make a lot of money. Song Kaiji of Farmer Gar in the Apocalypse actively admires Shen Qing and is more than happy to be the loving trophy husband to a wealthy entrepreneur. And Lin Yu of Gar So Proud at one point asks the transmigrated main character He if he's intimidated or humiliated by a Gar who can fight or hunt as well as a man. And He is just like, nope, at all, like, I think you're awesome. But also, very crucially, I think we see the capital M male partners facing some kind of rejection or nonconformity themselves. In My Favorite Manly Husband, again, our narrating character is the transmigrator Shen Yanbei. Now, his truck-kun, so to speak, the reason Shen Yanbei dies in the regular world is that he comes out as gay to his father, who strikes him so hard that he kills him. Like, that is the first chapter. He tries to come out. He already has this very bad relationship with his father and stepmother. He dies, and he wakes up suddenly married to a demure young man with a gorgeous body. After being forced to marry an ugly husband, Chu Henyen is the Gar's husband. He has a face covered in disfiguring scars that make him pretty unwanted as a husband. He's also kind of targeted for abuse by his adoptive family. Same with Wei Qingsheng of Farmer's Little Husband. He's an outcast from his own family, like his Gar husband Lin Yu. Even Sung Kaiji, the modern man in Farmer Gar through the Apocalypse, has lived through rejection in some parallels to the family dramas that happen in the quote-unquote ancient world. He was adopted by his stepfather, and his stepfather's family treats then the stepfather and Song Kaiji and his mother like shit because of this, to be very brief about it. I'm sure there exists somewhere where like the Gar's love interest is the most eligible bachelor in the village with a conventionally perfect body, but I haven't seen that yet. It's as if these abnormal Gar bodies can only be truly cherished by another supposedly abnormal body. And I think this ties into the Gar pregnancy as well. The novels I have encountered so far, they don't seem to be simply BL about an unwanted boy being made whole by another man. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but at least what I've seen, like this is a BL about two lonely misfits who are uniquely able to complete each other. This is mutual support. So it makes sense when the pregnancy comes in the narrative that it comes late. It's not what makes the gar whole or stable. They get pregnant because they now have found and made a place for themselves in partnership with someone who understands. I'm going to go back one last time to my favorite manly husband. So again, Gu Changfeng, by the end of the novel, he does recover his memories. He has a loving partner. He has a home. He has his martial arts. And then at the very end, despite that supposedly dull pregnancy mole and his non-conforming body, he gets pregnant with the twin babies that he and Shen Yanbei very much want. So he does get to have it all. In fact, he does deserve to have it all. So I've rambled long enough with that. There's a whole lot else going on with gar novels, a lot of other stuff that I find is like strange and hard to figure out, but these are some of the, at least some of the things that so far that I've been noticing, and hopefully it was all kind of interesting for you guys too. Moshi and Gumang here also know that you have a lot of choices in panels. We thank you for choosing this one, and they both wish you a lovely CitrusCon. I have been Lon Flamingo. I am not on social media, but I am on Discord under this name. I'm all over the con Discord this weekend. I'm also in the Citrus Squad Discord for the rest of the year, so please do feel free to keep yelling at me about pregnant boys anytime. As I said, there's a discussion thread for this panel particularly, and an Mpreg meetup thread, so you can share other thoughts, recommendations, corrections, just go nuts. I've also, on that discussion thread also, I've included some links for where to buy Danmei in print that are not Amazon for Canada, the EU, the UK, and the US. I'm also going to plug the only thing I'm going to plug here is my AO3. I am also under Lon Flamingo. I've got a couple of original BL novellas there if you are interested. You'll be extremely unsurprised that they deal with some of the themes that I have brought up here. All right, I'm done talking right now. I'm going to turn it over to you folks. Do you have questions about what you've read here or insights? What are your favorite things about Mpreg? Do you have a pregnancy headcanon you want to pitch to the class? Here, I'm gonna leave up this slide of some Danmei that are unlicensed that I think are cool. The Sword No Way, I made this slide before the Sword No Way Out got licensed, so that's the exception. But this is just something for us to look at while we chat. Okay. Do I have any resources explaining GAR in English? Not really. A lot of my knowledge. Again, like thank you to Jemima for like giving me some pointers as well. But the other most common places I see resources come up are like novel update, like the forum threads on novel updates. And part of this is like I'm not on social media at all, so like maybe there are resources out on like Tumblr or Mastodon or wherever the kids congregate these days, but like it's really hard to. I've been looking for just like oh, what's a nice primer or blog post from somebody who like has better Chinese knowledge than I do, and I just hadn't come across anything. Everything feels kind of scattered. I wish that abortion was explored more general and like, yeah, it's. I remember getting a question like that last year, and I think my answer is still the same, where it's like. Yeah, first off, I don't know why it's not a little. I think it's very underexplored. I've been thinking in an artistic sense. I have also been thinking about this. About why about what that would be like, what an abortion in a BL Mpreg. But I see it in fan fiction. I just think that the thing that I suspect is that people are working through the fear and anxiety around reproduction through the process of the man's pregnancy. So like, instead of focusing on the narrative about the abortion, like the feelings that you would go through, that you think about when you're thinking about pregnancy termination, just go through the pregnancy itself. And like, there's something like, maybe even if it's like a BL, which I don't find even that often, like where the pregnancy is like a kind of body horror adjacent. Maybe that's why like you decide, oh, we don't talk about the abortion because we're going to talk about these feelings through the horror of the pregnancy itself. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It's interesting though. I've wondered about that myself. Have you ever encountered a GAR novel that goes into female subgenders at all? Not yet. Oh, I would love it if that was there. At one point I did, when I was like kind of drafting this talk, I did originally want to talk about like women in Gar novels because that can be really interesting too, and I ended up having to cut it for time. But yeah, I haven't seen that. I would love to be able to find that if it exists. Like women have a really, I think that I'd see like an interesting place for women in Gar novels. Like they get, you'll, again, because like every author approaches this differently. So you'll get a lot of variety in the way that women are, the places women have in Gar novels. Again, Farmer Gar in the Apocalypse has thoughts on this, and it's really, and like though like there, that novel is like I think really actively thinking about the place of women both in the fantasy setting and in our real world setting. But yeah, just not female subgenders, at least not yet.
So,
Oh, geez, sorry, I'm
there
gonna.
was. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, go
Didn't
ahead,
mean to
Noodle. Go ahead.
interrupt.
No. Go
There's
ahead. I was
a
just about to ask
question.
for. Yeah, yeah.
There's a question earlier, where someone was asking if you would be putting up the slides on the discussion board sometime today.
I can, yeah. Yeah, you know what? I was planning on doing that. I just decided, I figured I'd probably do it after the panel so that it wasn't confusing. Yeah, I'll work on getting the slides up. Yeah. I don't know how useful they're gonna. I do like minimalist slides, I guess. So if they're, I'm not sure like how super useful they're gonna be, but I will put them up there. And again, yeah, if you guys got like specific questions that in response to that, yeah, feel free to ping me in either that discussion thread or elsewhere, or whatever. Or again, the Mpreg meetup thread, we got one. You can come chill with
Um,
us there.
it seems like there's another question of, were there any specific crackdowns against Gar novels lately? I'm not sure if
Uh,
you'd be able to answer that.
oh yeah, I am definitely the wrong person to ask because I hear about all this like third hand as well. I haven't heard about Gar novels specifically. I think just like from what I hear is that it's like queer stuff in general that's getting targeted, or I guess maybe I don't know queer stuff in general, like BL in particular is what I hear about getting targeted. Gar novels are really niche, and I wonder if like just the fact that they kind of fly under the radar is maybe makes them less of a target. But yeah, I guess the short answer is that I am A, the wrong person to ask, and B, I haven't heard about like Gar novels in particular drawing anyone's ire. So um, oh, I see this. I am a trans male, and Mpreg has been a really important way of representing my own body. That doesn't imply that I'm female in some way. I hate the way that society treats pregnancy and childbirth, rating it like. Yeah, no, sorry, I'm reading your. I'm gonna have to go back to your comment and read it again and maybe respond to it properly. But like, this is a lot of what I see from, at least like some Mpreg appreciators is that like something that I wish I could. I wish I had like the academic chops to delve into this, but like I see so often where like people are like you ask like trans people talking about Mpreg, and I see so often like right next to each other. There's one person saying like, "Oh, I don't really like Mpreg. It kind of squicks me out because you know I'm trans," and then like immediately after like, "Oh, I really like Mpreg. It feels like so interesting and like validating and it feels like a way of talking about my body because I'm trans." And it's like, yeah, there's so the way we all experience gender and our culture is so individual that like it's really fascinating to me how like yeah some of us like again like me find Mpreg so meaningful when other people like can find it like really frightening. So yeah, sorry, I'm gonna like when I've had time to like actually think about your comment, I will respond to it properly. But trans men and trans masks who right draw Mpreg, backbone of our society. Yes. Oh, sorry, excuse the sound of my swallowing. I just needed a little bit of water. Yes, we are. Uh, um, Actually, the more money something makes, the bigger the hand slap with down-main queer media. Yeah, the more attention it draws. Yeah. Support swallowing. Thank you. All right. I'm gonna try and scroll back a little bit through the comments. Sorry, I'm not like the Twitch streamers who can like read like speak eloquently off the cuff and read the chat at the same time. I don't know how they do that because I can't do that. So I'm sorry that I'm just kind of sitting here just staring at stuff and being like, oh. Uh, Gar
Just so
popularity campaign. You know what? I'm okay with sometimes I'm okay with things I like flying under the radar because just like as much as you like being recognized for your great taste, I feel like some things that I just don't want the normies to get a hold of this. Like maybe we'll just keep it to ourselves. Oh, let's see. Someone asked earlier about periods in Gar novels. Have you found one that deals with that? Yeah. Oh, shit. Yes, there was one. That I can't recall the title of it. Shit. No, I have seen. There's at least one that I've come across that does mention it. And they especially mentioned, like, very briefly, they were describing the Gar, like, getting what was essentially a period for the first time, and it was not on that was like actually kind of the closest I've ever seen to like the Omega heat, where they were it wasn't like a sexual thing, but it was like extremely debilitating and painful for the Gar, especially like the first time. um I don't see menstruation as often as I would have expected, though, which is curious. I don't know why that is. Like, I don't hear it get discussed. Like the women characters don't discuss going through it either. It just kind of seems to get glossed over. But yeah, I'm for all of the like uh how so much of like the Omega heat draws from the experience of menstruation. I am kind of surprised that it just doesn't come up in Gar novels, but also like I think a lot of, from my understanding, the impetus behind creating like Gar verse was to kind of take away a lot of the very elaborate rules that you see in Omegaverse about things like heats and ruts. So maybe that's why you don't see it very often. I don't know. But yeah, that's a good question. I've wondered that myself, but yeah, it's really not that common to see menstruation get for Gars get discussed. But I guess not common for the women characters either. I don't know why that is. Join Lape, what do you think of the misogyny adjacent treatment of Gars? That's an interesting question, and I think that shit, we're running out of time. This is a really complicated question, but yeah, I think it's my suspicion is that it's similar to why so many Omegaverse stories deal with the poor, like bigoted treatment of Omegas. Is it's like I think a reflection of how women, like often women and queer people, but just a lot of people experience bigotry and marginalization in the real world. Because something that, like I said, something that I notice is that even though the idea that like Gars are the forgotten gender, the unwanted gender, that state of affairs is not really shown in a positive light. Like the Gars are like unhappy, and they seem like they're unhappy and they're suffering, and like other like women too. That was something that I kind of had to drop, is like the treatment of women in a lot of these novels is also like very bad. There are so many women who are victims of like side characters who are victims of domestic violence, and this is not shown for like as lighthearted as a lot of Gar novels can get. It's not shown in like a flippant light. I think like it's shown as it's like it comes out feeling very dark. So yeah, I think that the use of this like quote unquote misogyny against Gars is just like a way of going through and reflecting and processing misogyny and forms of bigotry that that like a lot of people experience, and different kinds of axes experience in the real world. I think that's what's going on. Yeah, and again, like because of the way that the Gar-verse, whatever you want to call it, came out of the Omegaverse, I think that's kind of where a lot of it is coming from. Is just the reflection of marginalization that authors and readers feel in their real lives. Yeah, that's my hypothesis anyway. Yes, I love Omegaverse because where else can I read about boys being slut shamed and told all they're good for is popping out babies? Like I know. There's so many. The way that like that's I think that's like the reason that the way that like Gar novels and the Omegaverse deal with that is like there's a lot of things that are happening at once. You're seeing like marginal people who have experienced marginalization themselves see that experience being played out, and like yes, this is something that's like a thing that art does. Like art communicates these feelings that we have. And also, but at the same time, there's like I mentioned the Schadenfreude at the beginning. Like sometimes it's like I want to see it happen to somebody else. Like I remember getting into that in my panel last year about Mpreg. Like my adorable pregnant husband, as an example. There are some scenes where Iwamoto goes through like basically pelvic exams, and it's extremely uncomfortable and upsetting for him, understandably. And I'm reading this as somebody who has gone through pelvic exams and being like, yeah, it does suck. And there's something like helpful about like this. It's like it's a you have to you got to go through them for your own health. It's a reality that you got to live with. And it was sometimes it's a little bit helpful to see somebody who would usually not have to do that. Is like
Mhm.
a helpful way of dealing with the bitterness of that comes with the biological unfairness of reproduction.
On Flamingo?
I, yes. Sorry, I'm rambling now. I'm
No,
done,
it's
aren't I?
okay. It's just that we are at time,
Yeah,
so I
yeah.
wasn't sure if you wanted to wrap it up or not.
No, yeah. I think I'm good. Sorry, I am coming to you guys live from my bathroom where I can be behind several doors and away from earshot of my young child. So it's been like a weird experience me just rambling in my bathroom here alone. So thank you for bearing with me while I do that. Um, and yeah, when you give a talk and you're not in a room in front of people, you can't like receive them. So I hope that this is all like made sense as I like, hope that people can hear me and are there somewhere. I'm not really sure, but yeah, thank you again, everybody, for attending. I want to switch to my here, like Gumong and sorry, I love these dolls a lot, so I wanted to put them up one more time. Thank you again. Thank you for attending. I hope you guys got something out of it. Everyone have a wonderful con. Enjoy yourselves, and take care. It's tough out there. Be well. Be well.
Yes, and for anyone who has missed it, the giveaway bot is running. You have about 2 more minutes for your entries.
Oh, I didn't
But
even know there was one. All right, cool.
yeah,
Yeah, giveaway bot.
it's Seven Seas is giving away Joyful Reunion. So
Oh,
yay!
Joyful Reunion is so good.
Okay,
It's
so
so good.
put in your last minute entries and have a great rest of your day, everyone.